What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kenahan, and I've been on this planet for 6,730 days. I have never seen a game as good as the one that I just witnessed about 30 minutes or so ago. I've been procrastinating recording this. I've been going crazy. But the Washington Commanders, on a game-winning Hail Mary from 52 yards from Jayden Daniels, just beat the Chicago Bears 18-15 in a thriller. Game of the year, maybe you could say, for this one. It was not pretty. It was not pretty, but oh my god. Guys, I'm just stunned. A Hail Mary, 52 yards. Jayden Daniels, the rookie, launching one out to Noah Brown. It was tipped. Noah Brown, I saw a good post from Nico. He said Noah Brown learned to sit back and observe, and that's exactly what he did. He sat back there, caught it off the tip, and Washington, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Let me just get right into it. All right. I named this section a madhouse in Landover. That's what Jim Nantz called it. But oh my goodness. Jayden Daniels and this miracle. It did not look pretty the entire time. I thought this team didn't deserve to win this game. And you could still say that now, but at the end of the day, this team is 6-2, 4-0, remains undefeated at home, and still remain in first place in the NFC East. Currently having a top two record in the NFC overall. This team somehow found a way to stay in it. Now they were up at one point 12-0, but they found a way to stay in it. And even when they were losing, it was bad. It was bad. Bears scoring 15 unanswered in a low scoring game. Somehow, some way, 25 seconds on the clock, and Jayden Daniels and this offense deliver. A lot of questionable calls, a lot of questionable things that happened in this game, both refereeing wise, the decisions from coaches, decisions from coordinators. It was a wild game. But at the end of the day, Jayden Daniels somehow found Noah Brown 65 yards downfield for a completion that gave the Commanders an 18-15 victory. It was by far the best Washington game I've ever seen. You could tell from the crowd that from the beginning that this crowd was in on this game, and we had not seen that in Washington ever in my life. Really, I've never seen a crowd like that in Washington. I knew so many people going to this game. The stands were packed in burgundy and gold and black as well because they were wearing black jerseys. And at the end of it, these fans, they were there the entire time. They were making an impact on this game, and you could really tell they were making an impact. The Bears had multiple false starts, multiple illegal formations, multiple delayed games in this game. And you could really tell the fans were loud enough to impact the Bears offense and the Bears overall. And so at the very end, even though Washington did not put up a pretty game offensively, even though this offense was not what was advertised throughout this one for the fans were rewarded. Oh my God, were rewarded with the Hail Mary. A core memory for me, really. Jayden Daniels, Hail Mary, only his 8th game in his NFL career, which is promising to be a very good one. I lost for words, really. It's spectacular what has happened. It is unbelievable. I was out on this team, really, for a majority of the second half because I knew. We'll get more into what the offense did later on. I realized I mixed up on the screen. I mixed up the two categories, but we'll get more into it later on. But this offense did not deliver for Washington throughout this entire game. There was questionable play calling. There was questionable decisions made, not only by the offensive coordinator, but by the quarterback as well. Injuries happened left and right on this offensive line. But in the end, Jayden Daniels threw a big-time pass, and, this team delivered. And at the end of the day, this team did put up 12 points to keep them within a score of winning this game. And on a walk-off like this, it's spectacular. It's you can really tell the fan base is back. It's energized. It's the 30 years that I wasn't even alive for all 30 of those, but even 16 of them were enough for me. So, I mean, like, I mean, the pain that this fan base and the disappointment that this fan base has gone through over the last 30 years or so, to now just in one season, you're 6-2, the best record since I was 2 years old. Like, it's crazy just in one season what not only Josh Harris has been able to do in his first full season as the owner, but also what Dan Quinn has done. Many people were skeptical of him uh, and what he could bring to a team and like the culture. Many people called him Ron Rivera 2.0, right? But I mean, look, Adam Peters, what he's done, brought in the talent to be able to have something like this, to have fans fill up the seats in Northwest Stadium, and I mean, fill it with burgundy. Actually, fill it with our colors. It's just awesome. It's awesome to see, and the fan base was rewarded tonight. An 18-15 victory for Washington. Noah Brown, what a decision. Sit back. It's always the best decision to sit back because that ball is never going to be caught by someone usually in that scrum. It's going to be tipped in the air. Brown was ready for it. It got tipped backwards. It was the easiest Hail Mary catch of his life, really, right there. He had 3 catches for 73 yards the entire game, the biggest one being that 52-yarder to end the game. It was crazy. Let's just dive right into it. I know if you're watching the YouTube version, it says defense and offense. We're going offense first, okay? Offense first. So, yes, Jayden Daniels' final stat line, 21 of 38, 326 yards, a career high for him. He had the touchdown at the very end. It was only one touchdown the entire game for this offense, but it was when it mattered most. It was when the entire game was riding on one play, when most fans gave up on the game, including myself. I mean, I can count countless tweets that are like, oh, this loss, man. This loss is on Dan Quinn. This loss is on Cliff Kingsbury. This loss is on Jayden. This loss is on, I don't know, whoever you want to blame. Benjamin St. Juste. But then Jayden delivered something that is going to be played and replayed over this next week. It was a spectacular battle between the number 1 and number 2 overall picks. Going into this game, we didn't even know if that was going to happen with Jayden Daniels. Again, I mentioned it in the pregame pod, or the preview pod, that it was going to be the longer he goes without not being listed as out, the more I think he was going to play, which seems like obvious, but I mean, it also though makes sense. And he does end up playing. He does end up starting, and he puts up one of the best games of his career. Now, there have been better ones in terms of number wise, but man, it was a beautiful deep ball at the very end. He bought himself a lot of time. The man was running as well. 8 carries for 52 yards for Jayden Daniels. He was averaging almost 7 yards per carry. This man was doing it not only through the air, but using his legs. He was putting his body on the line. Bruised ribs. This man took some crazy shots from Montez Sweat, from Wright, and from some of these other Bears defensive linemen. This man was getting knocked down left and right, and not having Brandon Coleman, concussion, didn't even play in this game. Cornelius Lucas, injury. Sounds like he's been seen in a walking boot. He's out for this game and probably for the future as well if he's in a walking boot. Andrew Wiley has been dealing with an injury throughout this entire game. Nick Allegretti, I saw down a few times. I mean, this offensive line was beaten up. It was beaten up. We had Trent Scott out there at tackle, and I'll have to check back to see. I think Wiley was also playing at tackle, but he definitely wasn't 100% throughout this game. Like, this offensive line was getting destroyed by this Bears pass rush. Jayden Daniels, though, I mean, 21 of 38, maybe his completion percentage, is not crazy, 82% or whatever it was, but it was still an incredible game. And any other quarterback we've seen in the Ron Rivera era, if they were in this game, we would have lost. We would have lost because we've seen it. We've seen us lose. Or actually, no, we won that game against the Bears a couple years ago, but it was disgusting. It was really disgusting. So, I mean, it's crazy. Just the amount of energy that Jayden Daniels has brought to this fan base. He's just rejuvenated this entire city, really. This entire the town of Landover, Maryland. It was crazy. We'll have to get into the struggles It was struggles for like 3.5 quarters. For 58 minutes of that game, this offense struggled. For really 59 minutes, actually. 59.5 minutes of that game, this offense really struggled. They got down the field multiple times. Looking at the team stats here. Hold on, let me bring it up. Washington outgained Chicago 481 yards to 307. Washington had 23 first downs to Chicago's 15. Washington had a higher time of possession at 32 minutes compared to Chicago's 27. And at one point, I believe it was at about 70% of the time Washington had the ball compared to the Bears' 30%. So Washington, numbers-wise, should have won this game, but they could not find the end zone until the very last play. This team struggled in the red zone. We saw it happen in week 2 against the New York Giants, where this team put up 7 field goals and somehow won that game, pretty much because the Giants kicker was injured on the very first play of the game, and the Giants were somehow dumb enough to not realize that and didn't elevate a backup kicker. That was not going to happen again. This team is never going to win a game just kicking field goals ever again. That was an anomaly. That was, I think, the first time in history or something like that, first time in a long time. So when I saw this team with 12 points with like 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, Caleb Williams is starting to heat up. I knew it was over. I mean, we were up 12-3 or 12-7 or whatever it was, 12-0. I knew we weren't going to win that game without scoring a touchdown. And I mean, it took 59 minutes, and it took 60 minutes, actually, really. It took 60 minutes to score a touchdown, but this team did it. This team did it, and it's awesome to see. The running game, Brian Robinson, 16 carries for 65 yards, averaged over 4 yards per carry. Austin Eckler, 7 carries for 52, averaged over 7 yards per carry. I already mentioned Jayden Daniels averaging 6.5 yards per carry. I will say, I am shocked Cliff kind of abandoned the run game towards the end in that second half. There were many decisions in this game that were concerning to me, like coaching-wise. One of them was the fact that, especially in the middle of that game, Washington was up, but they were kind of getting away from the run game, forcing Jayden Daniels to pass against a heavy blitz, and it was not working out well. That was something that kind of concerned me. Washington ended up running for 168 yards. 168. And I mean, they ran the ball 32 times, but if you look at, like, take out Jayden Daniels 8, and you only have like 24, and Washington had like 70 plays in this game or something crazy like that. So like less than 40% of the time Washington ran the ball. So there was that. Or Washington, like, Cliff called an actual running play and they ran the ball. So there was that. The receiving game, Scary Terry, man. Scary Terry, 5 catches, 125 yards, a beautiful deep ball from Jayden Daniels early on in the game for 61 yards on 8 targets. It was great what I saw from Terry today. What he does with his forearm catches when he like dives to the ground and catches it with his forearms, pretty surprising. I don't know how like consistently you would be able to do that, but I mean, he's done it all of his career and it's worked out great for him. So good stuff. There was one of those catches that was clearly a drop, but this offense recognized it was a drop, so they raced up to the line of scrimmage and they got the ball snapped before Chicago could challenge it or anything. So there was that as well. Zach Ertz, 7 catches for 77 yards. Good stuff from him. Noah Brown, I mentioned, 3 catches for 73, including the 52-yarder. John Bates had a catch, 1 catch for 20. Brian Robinson, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, Austin Eckler all had catches as well. That is 8 different receivers with a reception from Mr. Jayden Daniels in this one. That's been a key thing for Washington's offense this entire season, throwing to a lot of different guys, running the ball with a lot of different guys. 4 different players got to carry. 8 different players got to catch. Of course, they've just done it the entire season, and it has worked out very well. Now, again, I mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. It was concerning what I saw from him and his play calling a little bit today. Now, this was a very good Bears defense they were going up against, but there were some things that were concerning. It was definitely going away from the run game in kind of the middle part of the game, back end of the second quarter and throughout the third quarter. But I mean, still, like this team somehow gets a win. I'm still thinking about that. This team somehow still gets a win, even with all of the offensive struggles. It's I mean, it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch because I've never seen a team like this. I've never seen a team be able to pull and string together a win like this, still somehow maintain and be in the game. Even though they cannot score in the red zone, this team was 0 of 4, scoring a touchdown in the red zone, or 0 of 3, I think. This team was, I mean, just kicked field goal after field goal. Now, Austin Seibert, Cyber, I gotta figure that out. But Austin, automatic Austin, I've called him because that man was very good until that last kick. That last kick when he just hit the ground, he kicked the grass instead of actually kicking the ball, which usually does not end well. But beyond that, Austin has done great so far this season. Beyond the blocked kick, and then this one when he just kicked the ground instead of kicking the ball, which we kind of need to do to make a field goal. So, I mean, I've liked what I've seen out of our kicker. He's been pretty consistent, only 2 misses since he became the kicker in week 2. But I mean, it's just been incredible. It's just been incredible seeing this team fight and claw and somehow, some way, win this game. I mean, this team is 6-2, guys. This team is 6-2, 4-0 at home, 4-0. Like, this team has not lost at Northwest Stadium in Northwest Stadium's history. Think about that. Northwest Stadium's history. This team has not lost there. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy to see. Matt Eberflus has not had a good away record as a head coach for the Chicago Bears. Wonder if that kind of played a role in this, especially with how the crowd was a major factor in this game. And you could really tell it, like I said, with all those false starts. I got to look at how many penalties the Bears had. I'll look at both teams, actually. So the Bears had 8 penalties in this one for 60 yards. Washington had 5. I believe 4 of those were probably within the red zone. So this team, the red zone struggles continue for this team. They do. But, I mean, this team, man, we'll just get to the good stuff. Because this defense, for the first 45 minutes of this game, was putting up probably the best defensive performance of this season. For the first 45 or 40 minutes of this game, they put up the best defensive performance of the season. Held the Bears to 0 points. It looked like maybe Washington was going to get a shutout for the first time, I believe, in like 500-something games. So there was that. And then Frankie Louvu was everywhere. Hold on, I've shouted out some more people at that in my halftime thing. But Frankie Louvu was everywhere. Who else? Mike Sanderstill, Quan Martin. Let's look at the tackles. Quan Martin finishing with 11 tackles and a tackle for loss. Bobby Wagner had 7 tackles. Louvu had 6. St. Juice had 6. Sanderstill with 5. This team was also getting to the quarterback as well. 2 sacks on the day. Deron Payne got 1. Jalen Holmes as well, off the practice squad, onto the active roster with Jonathan Allen's injury. Is also got a sack. I believe it's his first sack this season, I want to say, maybe second. So, I mean, this team was getting to Caleb Williams as much as they could because Caleb is a magician himself. He had a great game, especially in that second half, because the first half was a struggle. He was like 2 of 9 or something like that. But in the second half, he finished 10 of 24 for 131, which doesn't look great with a passer rating less than 60. But the final 2 drives, that man was doing everything for this Bears offense. And he kind of had to fight his way through some bad Shane Waldron play calling, especially this Bears offense overall towards the end. But, I mean, man, it was fun to see. It was fun to see Caleb Williams. So hopefully we play this Bears team again because this Bears team was really fun. It was a good battle. And ultimately at the end of the day, Noah Brown just caught a pass on the very last play of the game to win the game. So an 18-15 game. I will say this defense as well. In my preview like podcast and on Friday, I said with David Miller that this game was going to be high scoring. 2 explosive offenses. I know the Bears had a good defense, but a defense that was not good for Washington. And on the other hand, for the Bears, I mean, a defense that really lacked a good run defense. And so I thought this game would be high scoring because Washington had Brian Robinson in this running attack. I thought they'd gain a lot there, which they kind of did, but they didn't really run the ball a ton. On the other hand, Caleb Williams really struggled against this Washington defense surprisingly had a pretty good performance in this one. I thought both teams would score 30 plus. I thought it'd be like 37-31 Bears in a shootout. This game was the complete opposite of that. It was a 15-18 game where only 3 touchdowns were scored, including one on the very last play of the game. Meanwhile, 4 field goals were scored. So it was definitely a more defensive game than I expected. I made a joke with David as well, saying, well, I mean, we're talking about a shootout here when, like, this game is probably just going to be like 15-10 or something like that. And, I mean, 18-15, the lowest offensive performance from the Washington Commanders so far this season. The Bears have scored 35 plus or 30 plus in each of their last 2 games, and now they put up 15 against one of the worst defenses in the league, which maybe is not one of the worst defenses in the league anymore. So you'll love to see it. It was a crazy game on defense. Guy I need to shout out, Mr. Johnny Newton, the second round pick for the Washington Commanders, a pick that many were not a fan of at the time due to, of course, Johnny Newton coming off of a broken foot, ended up being 2 broken feet, and also being a defensive tackle. Many called him Fedarian Mathis 2.0. Meanwhile, I was like, guys, this is a first-round talent in Johnny Newton who fell to the second round because of his broken foot, but he's still going to make an impact for this team when he's healthy. And oh boy, did he make an impact today, and a major impact. He pretty much won Washington the game, or kept Washington in the game. I wouldn't say win it, but like kept him in the game. I mean, Shane Waldron's play calling at the goal line was very questionable throughout this entire game, including this one when they hand off the ball to a backup center. Who let me bring you some backstory on this, because if you guys missed the podcast on Friday, you know the guy who I brought on, David Miller, big time fullback guy, big time guy about fullbacks. He loves fullbacks. He loves Kari Blasingame, who was the Bears fullback for the last like 2-3 seasons, one of the best fullbacks in the league. Blasingame was cut on Friday. He was cut on Friday or Saturday, I believe. He was cut, and I mean, it was horrific. It was David's worst day of his life, but they, instead of keeping Kari Blasingame, who has been a healthy and active the last 2 games for Chicago, they've been using their backup center. I forgot his name. That's my fault. Hold on, let me bring it up. They've been using their backup center as a temporary, I don't know if temporary fullback or like they've been using him as a fullback. And yeah, I don't remember his name, but so they hand the ball off to him at the 1-yard line. When you have Roschon Johnson, a very good power back in your backfield, you have DeAndre Swift, who, if you can get him to the outside, he can beat most linebackers to the outside with his speed. Yet you hand off the ball to a backup running back. The fumble actually was on Caleb Williams, but really it was the backup center or backup fullback or whatever that got the ball and kind of like, I mean, you know, like how you're supposed to hold a like towel to take a handoff. He had it using the other arm, so like he was doing this and like it bounced off his forearm, and it goes right into the hands of Johnny Newton at the 1-yard line, and that saves a touchdown for the Washington Commanders. So this game would be over really if Chicago scores that touchdown there. Now, I'll get into another questionable decision by Dan Quinn later on, but that might be affected by the decision of the fumble or whatever by Chicago here in this one. But, I mean, like, what are we doing, Shane Waldron? What are we doing? And then later on, a 50-50 ball to DJ Moore. Like, he called up a 50-50 ball to DJ Moore when you're at the 1-yard line, ready to score a touchdown, and you're trying to burn out the clock as well. And it's a 50-50 ball. That's an incompletion to DJ Moore. There's just so many questionable decisions from Shane Waldron throughout this one. And like there was a back-to-back QB draws with Caleb Williams. It was very confusing what Shane Waldron's plan was down the stretch of that game. But ultimately, it led to a Washington victory. And this defense was all over the place in that first half. They made Caleb Williams confused. They got the Caleb Williams, pressured Caleb Williams. Great tackling from guys like Frankie Louvu, who I think should be on an all-pro team right now. That man is playing out of his mind. Bobby Wagner was getting pressure on Caleb Williams, forced multiple incompletions in this one. This defense was all over the place in that first 3 quarters. They got gassed, you could see, or they weren't really tackling well in that fourth quarter. But, oh, man, in that first quarter and in the second quarter as well, they were dominating this Bears offense, and they really gave Washington a chance to get away early. I tweeted this as well, but the Bears offense usually gets off to a bad start. And then the second half is usually when Caleb starts to find a rhythm and they start to score points, which is exactly what happened in this game. So I was assuming, okay, this is Washington's chance now to get a few touchdowns on the board. Go up 14-0 early, and you put the pressure on Caleb Williams to come back. Washington couldn't get into the end zone. So it's 3-0, 6-0, 9-0, 12-0. And like it's still a 2-possession game. So Caleb Williams in the fourth quarter goes back-to-back drives, scores a touchdown, and all of a sudden you're down. It's crazy. But at the end of the day, Washington still wins. No, thanks to Noah Brown and thanks to Jayden Daniels and a miracle in Maryland. So yeah. But that's pretty much all I gotta say about this defense. It's just this defense has improved a lot over the last few weeks. I'm excited to see what the future holds for this defense. This defense, knock on wood, has stayed mostly healthy so far beyond the Jonathan Allen injury, which Johnny Newton has really kind of turned it up in the last couple of weeks and has had some pretty good games. So I liked what I've seen from this defense, especially in this one against this Bears team. At the end of the day, you only held the Chicago Bears to 15 points. A very good offense led by the number 1 overall pick with many good receivers like DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen. It was great to see. So, I mean, like Caleb threw for less than 140 yards in this one. I mean, you love to see that. The run game, though, definitely hurt us a little bit. Chicago ran for 196 yards, 129 of them coming from DeAndre Swift, as well as 2 touchdowns as well. So the run defense, especially without Jonathan Allen, definitely is taking a hit. But overall, this team has looked better. Some other things, Benjamin St-Juste, few penalties there. I thought we lost the game because of him. Ended up winning the game somehow, but oh boy, I mean, they cut the Josh Harris and Adam Peters reaction after the Benjamin St-Juste defensive pass interference at the 1-yard line, and oh boy, I'm just saying, I don't think Benjamin St-Juste, the chances he's on this team in 2025 are very, very slim. So there's that. But yeah, I think Peters is looking forward to drafting a guy like Siobhan Ravel or Will Johnson in the draft. But yeah, this secondary still needs some work. Sanders still was pretty good for most of the game. I liked what I saw at most of the other people in the secondary. Linebackers were incredible. I mean, I still find it crazy. Adam Peters took the worst linebacking room in the entire league last year, and in one offseason made it the best linebacking room in the entire league, or top 3 really right now. Bobby Wagner has been incredible, and Frankie Louvu as well, as a pass rusher, as a dual kind of hybrid linebacker / defensive end, has played at an all-pro level. So I've loved what I've seen out of those guys, and overall, just this defensive intensity. I mean, he's done so much more with this. Peters and Quinn have improved so much with this defense than what Ron Rivera has done with this defense over 4 seasons. So it's crazy how much the culture has changed in just 8 weeks here in Washington. But oh my, this team is 6-2, guys. This team is 6-2 at the end of the day. Some final notes. One decision I want to criticize Dan Quinn on. One decision I want to criticize Dan Quinn on and the analytics staff. All right, 4th and 1 at the Washington 12-yard line. 4 minutes, 21 seconds to go. Washington is up 12-7 at this point. Chicago just drove all the way down the field and was at the 1-yard line and then just fumbled. So, I mean, like, they were going to go down and score another touchdown. You could feel it. Instead of, it's 4th and inches, actually. It's not really 4th and 1. It's 4th and inches. Instead of going for it, Dan Quinn decides to punt it, which is not what I would have done in this case. Now, people might argue, hey, they're at the 12-yard line. Hear me out here. Looking at the numbers here. By going for it, Washington's win percentage is 77%. If they succeed, and also they have a 70% success rate on converting this 4th and inches. By succeeding, their win percentage jumps to 86%. All right, 86%. But instead of going for it, which they would have had a higher win percentage anyways by going for it, they elected to punt it. So instead of having a 77% chance to win, it went down to a 72% chance to win. So there's that. And I mean, Chicago at the end of the day ended up just driving down the field, wasting more time and still scoring a touchdown. So, I mean, it was a pretty big decision from Dan Quinn. I wonder what he's had to say about that. One of the reporters probably would have asked him about it. I'm recording this without knowing the press conference or anything, but I mean, someone probably said something about that, which is interesting. I would have gone for it if I was Dan Quinn. I know some people, it might be a controversial decision there, but I would have gone for it. So that was kind of one of my other notes. Some other things, just the fan base in general, guys. The fan base in general. You could look at the stadium and just see the energy. Once Noah Brown caught that pass, it wasn't like it was filled with Chicago Bears fans in that end zone. It was filled with burgundy and gold. And the reactions from the team, from Dan Quinn, it was incredible. And this team is 6-2. This team is 6-2, second best record in the NFC. It's spectacular. It is spectacular what has happened in Washington, D.C., and in Landover, Maryland, and in Ashburn, Virginia over the last 12 months, really. From this team disappointing everyone, a 4-win team, losing, 12 of their last 14 games, or 13 of the last 15 games last season, after starting the season 2-0 and getting the second overall pick, firing the head coach, firing the GM. It was pretty much like a lame duck year for Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew, who's actually still with the team, but like Marty Herney. And now what? You bring in Adam Peters, you bring in Dan Quinn, draft Jayden Daniels, draft all these pieces, bring in Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner in free agency, and look where this team is now. In one offseason, this Commanders team has had more success than Ron Rivera ever had in 4 years. I'll say that, like 6-2. Best record Washington has had since 2008. 2008. So that is that. Yeah, that is pretty much all I gotta say. It was a spectacular win. Best win of my life, easily. That one. I was not expecting really anything in that game, but somehow, some way, the Washington Commanders win a game. I've never seen in my life this Commanders team have the luck that they had in that game. The Hail Mary, the tip, the poor play calling from the other team. I mean, our team had some pretty poor play calling, but also from the other team having pretty poor play calling down the stretch. So giving us the opportunity to win the game, and I mean, this team actually delivered. So the Washington Commanders, an 18-15 victory over the Chicago Bears. Commanders fans should be happy this week. Next week, we've got the Giants as well. That'll be a fun episode coming up on Friday. I'll have a good guest for that one as well on the preview pods. Thank you for watching or listening to this week's episode of Keeping It with Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.